Hello, this is Anna, the Pretty Shepherd, and today I want to talk about Hungarian embellishments, their origin and their meaning, deeply rooted in shamanistic lore. And yes, I promise the thumbnail is not clickbait.
I absolutely forgot to mention, but if you like my hairstyle, you can check it out here.
Even though traditional motifs show up in a great variety of mediums of traditional Hungarian art, ranging all the way from copper to wood through textiles and leather. The examples that I will be referring to in this particular video will mostly be from the realms of carved or painted wood, such as these, and especially from the realms of embroidery and leather work, or applique work, that's the word. Such as these, or these, or these, or these, or even this. Yup, this vintage peasant blouse features traditional Hungarian Nouveau inspired embroidery, which I have to say is undoubtedly the most famous and most likely the most easily recognizable traditional Hungarian embroidery style. Truth be told, it is popular almost, just barely almost, to the point of coming across as touristy. Don't get me wrong, I am super duper lucky to have stumbled across this vintage shirt in a thrift store, and I adore it and I plan to wear it to shreds. But the thing is that these embroidery motifs are infamously featured on every type of souvenir item that you can imagine. Hey, Anna, Néni,
Yes?
I was wondering if you could help me with a little bit of advice?
Advice? Yes, of course. I have plenty of those. For example, how you could stop looking like a bull ready to go to the Sunday market to be sold if only you took out that ring from your nose. Advice. There you go. What else can I help you with?
So, an American friend of mine is coming to visit, and I wanted to pick her out some souvenirs in advance so I can give her something. And I was wondering if you could help me with that, since you're like into old traditional stuff.
Old stuff?
Yeah, you know, like embroidered, like Hungarian patterns, like Nouveau, colourful, that sort of stuff, you know.
Oh, I see. So you want to get her a nice embroidered pillowcase, or maybe bed sheet, or maybe an apron?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I was thinking more along the lines of like a t-shirt, or like shoes, or maybe like a cute phone case. That would be like really cute. Or maybe some hair clips. You know, like the retro vintage kind, you know. Ooh, I know, better yet, because she's like really big into coffee, so I could get her like a mug.
What? It's on the Facebook internet?
Just look at it. Just look at it.
Oh, they have here a pen!
Yeah, it's like a web shop, you know, they have all the items listed there. You just like scroll, you know, remember like I showed you how to use the Facebook, you know, and you just scroll like that.
A keychain!
Yeah!
Magnet!
Great! Yeah.
Ah! And tongue? What is a tongue?
You know what, just give it back. I'll figure it out on my own. Thanks. Bye! Yep, that's pretty accurate. It's everywhere. And seriously, I bet you know what I'm talking about. In fact, I wonder, is there any particular thing in your country that seems to be everywhere when it comes to souvenirs? Do let me know in the comments, because it can't just be Hungary. It can't, or at least I hope it's not the only country like this. Anyway, as gorgeously rich as the Nouveau embroidery style is, it's still just one of hundreds of other embroidery styles in Hungarian culture. By the way, usually most embroidery styles get their names from a region or a village where they originate from. Not Matyó though. That one actually comes from a group of Hungarians living in Mezőkövesd area. Anyway, just as there are different folk fashions for every area with variations from village to village, there are also different embroidery types for each region, with some that are truly village specific. And now comes a disclaimer. I'm really not an expert in embroidery, so instead of going into very specific details, I'm just going to use some very broad strokes to give you some very general information about the origin and the meaning of these traditional motifs.
3.5 minutes ago.
And yes, I promise, the thumbnail is not clickbait. This may sound far-fetched right now, but please allow me to take a few centuries worth of steps back in time to explain. Hey, story time! Hungarians came from Asia. Hungarians came from Asia as nomadic horseback riding people and settled in Europe sometime around the late 9th to early 10th centuries. We brought our own culture and a pagan belief system closely linked to nature. There were sacred shaman-like people called Táltos who could interpret supernatural signs, read the night sky, and communicate with the spirits. Now we all know that every belief system worth its salt has to have an explanation for where the world and all of life originate from. And in the case of pagan Hungarians, it was a surprisingly biological one. Hungarians were well aware that women had this magical ability of creating life and bringing it into the world. And when they gazed up into the night sky, what they saw wasn't just the star-speckled Milky Way. To them, it was a crack in the very fabric of the universe, which was then interpreted as a gate or a sacred hole through which the world itself was born.
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey. Do you know what the crack is?
Yup! It's the galactic vagina of the sky.
It's a crack.
Unfortunately, they went with a less catchy name. They decided to call it the Tree of Life. Their loss. But anyway, even the most simple and minimalistic depictions of the Tree of Life already have layers and layers and layers and layers of meanings to them. These sacred trees of life always embody three main elements. First of all, the roots, which symbolize the underworld. Please note the way that the roots always branch off into two little directions. Just like the Milky Way spreads apart when it's close to the horizon, that way it creates this magical gate, so to speak. Then there's the very majestic crown, which symbolizes the heavens above. And thirdly, there's the trunk, which is the level of our very own human world. Symbolically, the trunk can also be read as an ever so winding flow of life. As I've said, these core elements are present in every tree of life, even in their most simple and minimalistic depictions. However, as time went on, the flowery Byzantine ornament style influenced, shaped, and somehow cross-pollinated the nomadic Hungarian symbols. But truth be told, this happened to and fro in a very wide geographical area, which makes it very difficult to discern where the influence originally came from. I mean, there are embroideries in India, which you could definitely say that they're Hungarian, and nobody would bat an eye, because they're so similar. Then, in the 16th through 17th centuries, we received very strong Ottoman influences as well to the overall fashion style of Hungarians. This aided the development of a beflowered, creeping vine sort of ornament style. Later on in the 18th through 19th centuries, we were hit by various waves of Germanic influences, resulting, for instance, in trees of life looking a lot more like vases full of flowers, though they still maintained their three core elements: the underworld, our human world, and the heavens above. So in a way, the visual representation changed a lot during the centuries, but the meaning behind it stayed the same, ingrained in the collective consciousness of the Hungarians. Eventually, with the rise of Art Nouveau and Secession style, floral vine designs grew in popularity. There was a to and fro of influencing, again, as the bourgeois romanticized folkloric motifs, and the peasants, in turn, adapted city trends into their own art style. Traditional designs became less and less stylized and somehow grew into flowery bouquets and branches. My favorite example to illustrate this are the shirts of the Chango people. The more archaic shirts have designs based in geometry and stylization, whereas the newer ones are a lot more floral and lifelike in their designs. And please do put a pin in that, because we'll come back to it later. With time, certain motifs gradually earned certain meanings. However, this could vary from village to village. There were some flowers that became more popular than others, such as the tulip, which is basically a core feature of more modern trees of life. Indeed, it is such a common motif that the chests used for storing clothes in village households are officially called tulipántosláda, or tulip chests. Now, a super duper general rule of depicting trees of life is that we never paint tulips or flowers upside down or hanging, because it can be a symbol of death. Except in some villages where they still do it, and they just call it a bird instead. So it's not a flower. It's not a symbol of death anymore. No siree, it's a bird. Yep, it's a bird. Or a tulip, upside down.
Sacrilege!
As the more stylized and geometric designs faded in popularity, peasants figured out all sorts of clever ways of embroidering more lifelike flowers. For instance, the Chango women of Gyimes would press real flowers from their garden, and when they were ready, they would place a sieve on top of it. Then they would use pen and paper to mark out, kind of to map out pixel by pixel really, what colors they should use for certain petals and how they could most realistically portray a certain real flower. Which is simply amazing, because it's the meeting point of the most archaic type of decoration, of cross-stitching, with the most newest lifelike of flower designs. I know that oftentimes newer designs are frowned upon and more archaic ones are placed on a pedestal of perfection, but I can't help but see the beauty in both. I'd love it if you could weigh in on this topic in the comments below, because I'm really curious to find out where all of you stand. Do you think that older designs deserve to be idealized just because they are more original? And I mean, what even is original, since we have been cross-culturally influencing one another since like forever, but basically. But anyway, please let me know in the comments where you stand in the debate of archaic art versus bougie blossoms. And yeah, you know what, since we have this beautiful alliteration over here, if you are too busy to write a lengthy comment, you can just write A or B. Because I really am super curious to find out what people think. Oh, I feel like I've related so much in this video already, but I also feel like I just barely scratched the surface of traditional embellishments. And if you want more in this topic, then you can also let me know. But this is going to be it for today. thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy traditional, folkloric or historical content, then do subscribe to my channel because that's what it's all about. And thank you very much for watching this video. Bye bye!